daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Almighty God, who in thy wisdom and goodness hast appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men and women, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us, thy servants, whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of important trusts in these islands. That thy blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and those whose interest thou hast committed to our charge. And this we beg for Jesus Christ's sake. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Good morning, members. Welcome back. Everyone looks nice and fresh this morning, like we're in for a good session, or what's left of this session, next 2 weeks. But before we take our seats, as I open the house this morning, I'm going to ask you to remain standing so we can give recognition to a former member who was passed since we know, and that was MP Kenny Bascom, who was funeralized recently. So let me open the house, and then we'll do the moment of silence. The house is now open, and join us in a moment of silence. Thank you, members. Excuse me. Members, the minutes from the 19th of July have been circulated. Are there any amendments or required for it? No amendments. The minutes will be confirmed as printed. Before I move on, let me acknowledge that we have present with us this morning, President of the Senate. Welcome, Madam. And we'll move on. Messages from the governor. There are none. Announcements by the speaker. We have 3 members have indicated today that they'll be absent. Honorable Minister Tanae Furbert, MP Levita Fogo, and MP Susan Jackson. Messengers from the Senate. There are none. Papers and other communications to the House. This morning, members, we have 11 papers that are going to be introduced. The first is named in the name of the Premier. Premier, would you like to do your papers?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the Banks and Deposits Companies Restricted Banks Amendment Order 2024, made by the Minister of Finance and acting on the advice of the Bermuda Monetary Authority in exercise the powers conferred by Section 14(3) and 5(c) of the Banks and Deposits Companies Act 1999.
Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the investment business recognized bodies reporting accountants facts and matters of material significance regulation 2024, made by the Minister of Finance and exercise the power conferred by Section 8061 of the Investment Business Act 2003. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the Investment Business Recognized Bodies Recognition Requirements Regulation 2024, made by the Minister of Finance and exercise the power conferred by Section 67(1) of the Investment Business Act 2003.
Thank you. Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the financial statements of the Tax Reform Commission from the 12th of February 2018 to the 21st of October 2018.
Okay. Continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly the Contributory Pensions Amendment of Benefits Order 2024, proposed to be made by the Minister of Finance and exercise the powers conferred by Section 37 of the Contributory Pensions Act 1970.
Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Finally, pursuant to the powers conferred by Section 96 of the Constitution, I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly Supplementary Estimate Number 1 for fiscal year 2024-25.
Thank you, Premier. Members, the next papers this morning is in the name of the Minister of Works. Minister?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly the draft lease agreement between the Bermuda Land Management Corporation and Seagrass Services Limited, reference area of land comprising 5.9 acres located at Burroughs Hill, Southside Ridge, between Stocks Road and Hall Street, St. George's, shown edged in yellow on the annexed photographic plan and as described in Schedule 1 attached to the lease. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, the next paper this morning is in the name of the Minister of Economy and Labor. Minister?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the position paper on progressing Bermuda's minimum hourly wage.
Thank you. Minister of Health has the next two. Minister?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly the Bermuda Health Council Health Service Providers Licensing Regulations 2024, proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for health after consultation with the Council and exercise of the power conferred pursuant to Section 15 of the Bermuda Health Council Act 2004. And in addition, I have the honor, Mr. Speaker, to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly the Bermuda Health Council High Risk Health Technology Regulations 2024, proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for health after consultation with the Council in exercise of the power conferred pursuant to Section 16D of the Bermuda Health Council Act 2004.
Thank you. And the final is in the name of the Junior Minister. Minister? Junior Minister?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly the National Pension Scheme First-Time Homeowner Refund Regulations 2024, proposed to be made by the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Sections 24(9)(f) and 69 of the National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Act 1998.
Thank you. Members, that's all the papers and communications. We thank you, ministers, for presenting them. Junior Minister. The next item on the order paper is petitions. There are none. Statements by ministers and junior ministers. Members, on the order paper, there are 9 statements. However, I'm going to seek your indulgence this morning. You know, there are often things that happen overnight that are very important business to bring to the attention of the public. And I think one such matter has happened since the deadline for statements being submitted. And with that, I'm going to ask your indulgence and let the Premier start with this. He has one statement on the order paper. There are going to be 2 now. I think he'll want to start with this one first and then go into a second one. So do we have the indulgence of the House? Thank you. Premier?
Mr. Speaker, good morning again. Let me first express my thanks to you and to the whole House for the indulgence by which I make this ministerial statement this morning. The subject of my statement today is a matter of national importance, and it is right that my first public statement to the people of Bermuda is made to the people's representatives in this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, the scriptures teach us that we should not be weary in well-doing, For in due season we will reap, if we faint not. Mr. Speaker, as of the close of business yesterday, I am pleased to advise this honorable House and the public that the full financing of the redevelopment project of the Fairmont Southampton Hotel has been achieved, and all parties have funded their obligations such that the project can now fully commence. Mr. Speaker, I can further confirm that the government of Bermuda, as previously indicated in this honorable House, is supporting this project with a sovereign guarantee of the sum of $75 million, advanced by Clarion Bank to support the redevelopment in accordance with the Government Loans Act 1978. I hereby inform this honorable House that guarantee was executed earlier this week. Mr. Speaker, this is a $560 million transaction, which signals the most resounding endorsement of Bermuda as a tourist destination, of the jurisdiction as a place for sound investment, and in the government of Bermuda as a valued partner to the private sector in support of economic growth and tourism recovery. Accordingly, the minister responsible for tourism, who sits in another place, has brought the Fairmont Southampton Resort Act 2023 into force effective today. Mr. Speaker, the redevelopment and ultimately the reopening of the Fairmont Southampton is of profound economic importance. Its closure has been felt throughout our economy, reducing Bermuda's airlift and limiting our capacity to host large group business. The reopening of the 600-plus room hotel will not only restore, but significantly reshape our hospitality landscape. Mr. Speaker, put simply, the construction phase of this redevelopment is scheduled to last approximately 15 months and will create approximately 700 jobs. Moreover, the project will inject over $500 million in foreign capital into our economy, reinforcing the confidence of international investors in Bermuda's potential and stability. Though this is not a new hotel, it is important to note, Mr. Speaker, that it is the single largest tourism investment in Bermuda's history. Upon completion, Bermuda will boast what will be akin to a brand new first-class resort with modern rooms, world-class restaurants, and a myriad of amenities that will make every Bermudian proud. This redevelopment will set new standards in luxury and service, ensuring that Bermuda's tourism product remains competitive on the global stage. Mr. Speaker, since the pandemic demonstrated the need and urgency of economic recovery, we have set about the work to renew tourism as the unmistakable second pillar of our economy. As the Honorable Minister of Economy and Labor shared with the country yesterday, this government is delivering on that imperative, with visitor expenditure steadily increasing, putting more money in the pockets of our tourism workers and those in our economy who support the tourism industry. In the years to come, our tourism sector will continue to drive economic activity, foster economic growth, and create many career opportunities for Bermudians. Mr. Speaker, already we have seen the involvement of local talent and businesses. Many of the companies engaged in the initial phase of the redevelopment, which we have witnessed this year, are Bermuda-based, including Atlantic Mooring, BCM Construction, Insocon Construction, On-Site Engineering, Performance Construction, and architectural consultant HDH Limited. Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. There is much more to do. The actual work of redevelopment must now be done, and in that we can rely on the demonstrated track record of success of developers, whose local activity at Rosewood Tuckers Point and internationally speaks for itself. However, the developer's statement yesterday gives an indication that the detailed planning required to execute a project of this scale has been done, and with materials and equipment en route to Bermuda, work on the site will commence within the next month. Mr. Speaker, the journey to this point has been an unlikely one. all the norms of development experience in transactions of this kind have been defied. On more than one occasion, the prospects have been so bleak that even the casual observer would have written off this deal as unmakeable. We have all heard the doubters, both inside this honorable house and those outside, who would wish for this government to fail to satisfy their narrow political agendas. Agendas, Mr. Speaker, that are out of step with the national imperative for this redevelopment to proceed. But, Mr. Speaker, despite those who have campaigned against this redevelopment, what has kept this entire transaction together has been a common purpose of understanding that speaks volumes of the promise of this island of Bermuda that we call home. This is good news, Mr. Speaker. This is good news for Bermuda and for Bermudians. This announcement represents a spark that will further ignite more entrepreneurship, business optimism, and tourism confidence. Today, we mark a significant milestone, but tomorrow we turn again to the work to make a reopened and fully functioning Fairmont Southampton a reality. Nowadays, Mr. Speaker, no matter the economic indicators that say otherwise, many on this island are content to spend their days lamenting that the sky is falling and the proposition of Bermuda is in decline. Thankfully, Mr. Speaker, they inhabit their own echo chamber, and the numerous private sector investors in this project have stood firmly behind its vision, proving the ultimate show of confidence in Bermuda's economy, confidence in Bermuda's tourism future, and confidence, Mr. Speaker, in this progressive Labor Party government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Mr. Premier, would you like to do your second statement now?
Certainly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, earlier this morning, I tabled in this honorable house the supplementary estimate number 1 for fiscal year 2024-25. At this time, I wish to provide the context of the mid-year review and provide an overview of the significant investment in social services that this government will make to ensure that more Bermudians benefit from Bermuda's economic progress. Mr. Speaker, over the past 7 years, this government has worked tirelessly to build a fairer and more equitable Bermuda, and that work has yielded progress. This government has reduced the tax burden on workers to the lowest level in history, after previous government raised taxes on workers to the highest level in history. This government has invested record amounts in affordable housing, with 75 units delivered and more properties coming online every month. This government has expanded child care support up to $900 a month per child for families earning up to $130,000 a year. This government has implemented a minimum wage for the first time in Bermuda's history. Understanding the concerns of hardworking Bermudians, this government took action and froze the standard premium rate for the 3rd consecutive year, saving all policyholders in Bermuda $540. And, Mr. Speaker, this government has consistently increased our seniors' pensions to keep in line with the rate of inflation after the previous government told our seniors that money doesn't grow on trees. Mr. Speaker, we made these choices that benefit working Bermudians despite inheriting a bad airport deal and a failed Morgan's Point project, which cost taxpayers over $250 million. After leading Bermuda through a once-in-a-century pandemic, this government implemented an economic recovery plan followed by an economic development strategy. Due to the successful execution of those sound plans, this government is set to deliver the first balanced budget in 21 years. The success of our plan is evident, as we have seen unemployment in Bermuda fall to the lowest level since 1980, a record number of Bermudians working in international business, and increased tax revenue coming into the public purse. This increased revenue has come after this government cut payroll taxes for 86% of workers and for every local business in Bermuda. However, Mr. Speaker, today is about more than the progress we have made. It is about what choices a government will make when confronted with the benefits of Bermuda's economic success. In July, when I addressed the people of Bermuda, I stated, and I quote, "Though we are proud of the work done thus far, your government recognizes our work is not done and that more is needed. There are people in our community who are hurting and who do not feel that enough has been done for them. They need to see and feel the benefits of our effort now, not given a promise that they will feel it in the future. The recent tragedies further highlighted our community's need for additional resources to tackle antisocial behavior and confront a mental health crisis." End quote. In that same address, I promised that this government would devote our focus to implementing additional investments that would make a meaningful difference in the lives of Bermudians, and pledged that we would present our plan when this honorable House reconvened in September. Mr. Speaker, this government upholds the promises that we make to the people of Bermuda. And that is why I'm proud to present to this honorable House and our country today an investment package of $25 million that reflects our commitment to invest in tackling the social challenges facing Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, this package will provide significant additional resources to tackle mental health throughout all segments of our community. We must confront the growing challenge of mental health, and this government will ensure that mental health resources are more accessible and support is available for those who need it, helping to reduce stigma and provide healing in our community. Tied to mental health, we will also expand substance abuse and intervention programs. Mr. Speaker, we will provide additional funds to help enhance public safety by increasing funding for the police while expanding interventions to address antisocial behavior. Our communities deserve to feel safe, and we will ensure that resources are in place to prevent crime, protect our neighborhoods, and build trust between law enforcement and the public. In addition, we are investing in extending trauma counseling services to break the intergenerational cycle of violence, and will work with community partners to expand access so that Bermudians can receive the counseling services required. This government has introduced programs to combat domestic violence, and this package will boost funding to these programs to ensure that the required resources are brought to bear to reduce the instances of domestic violence while providing additional support to victims of domestic violence. Mr. Speaker, we will provide more resources to our educators and social workers to help them better serve our youth and our families. Due to budget constraints, these services have not been funded to the level that meets the need. Today, that will change, and additional funds will be used to clear backlogs and assessments for at-risk students to ensure they have access to the required early intervention. Additionally, we will boost funding for speech and occupational therapists to ensure there is adequate support for students who may require additional services. Mr. Speaker, we are also making additional investments in infrastructure, funding for private roadworks, community lighting, upgrades to youth centers, refurbishments of community playgrounds, and doubling the funding to clear vegetation from roadsides, railway trails, and parks. Mr. Speaker, the single largest infrastructure investment in this package recognizes the reality of the sandwich generation and the challenges faced by parents who care both for their children and their aging parents. This package commences funding for the opening of a senior daycare facility to reduce the burden on adults who care for their senior parents. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, as part of our ongoing efforts to modernize and improve public services, the government is making significant investments in digital transformation. These initiatives include the development of a one-stop online portal where Bermudians can easily access and complete government services, from permit applications to payments. Mr. Speaker, this package also supports an expansion of after-school programs, additional investment to support the unsheltered population and reduce homelessness, additional funding for apprenticeships and training programs, additional rehabilitation programs for inmates to support successful reintegration to the community, additional staffing for regional health clinics, a capital grant to the Bermuda College, increased funding for consumer protection to support the work of the Cost of Living Commission to tackle price gouging, and additional funding to support seniors in our community who need additional support to live with dignity. While this is the most significant additional investment in social services in 20 years, this package is keeping with this government's ongoing commitment to deliver on its promise to rebuild Bermuda with Bermudians at heart. Mr. Speaker, this government is not just focused on fiscal success. As I said in my address to Bermuda in July, and I quote, "A balanced budget means little if the people we serve struggle to pay their bills and put food on the table. Great credit ratings do not help Bermudians as they are confronted with high prices at grocery stores, and a surplus on financial reports is nowhere near as important as Bermudians knowing that their government hears them and will do whatever it can to support them," end quote. This government will not delay the benefits of economic success and tell Bermudians to wait for future fiscal years, which may have the benefit of increased revenue from the forthcoming corporate income tax, to take action. Bermudians need support now, and this progressive Labor Party government will not wait until next fiscal year to act. Mr. Speaker, our goal is simple: to ensure that Bermuda's economic progress is felt by all Bermudians, and we will not stop working until we achieve this vision. Whether by enhancing public services, reducing prices, improving public safety, or improving mental health services, we are committed to taking action now. And Mr. Speaker, it is vital that I inform this House that despite this significant social investment package, this government is still on track to deliver that balanced budget. So, Mr. Speaker, let's recap. $25 million of additional investment in social services and investments to benefit the community, combined with a 60% reduction in energy taxes to cushion the impact of rising prices while still delivering a balanced budget. That is what sound economic policy delivered by a progressive Labor Party government that prioritizes the workers of this country can deliver. Mr. Speaker, Bermuda's economic progress does not belong to this government. It belongs to the hard-working people of this island. This government looks forward to continuing its work to build a Bermuda where shared progress and collective prosperity are the foundation for our future. Mr. Speaker, it is an honor to give this House, this honorable House, and the country a preview of what is contained in this government's social investment packages. Ministers of the government will share further details of the programs, some of which have already been implemented, next week when these measures are debated by honorable members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier, for both your statements. The next minister this morning who's delivering a statement to us is the Minister of Works. Minister, Deputy Premier, I'm jumped on that extra statement being put in there. The next one will be Deputy Premier. Sorry about that, Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Apology accepted.
All right, Ed.
Mr. Speaker, today I am tabling the bill entitled the Electricity Amendment Act 2024. Legislation that will create a license for large developments to generate electricity above the current license threshold of 500 kilowatts. Mr. Speaker, this bill strikes a balance between the needs of the license holder, also known as a distributed generator, and the stability of the grid, while minimizing any negative impacts, including costs to the ratepayer. Mr. Speaker, licenses are currently required for all production of electricity over the threshold as 500 kilowatts. The licenses currently available in the Electricity Act 2016 for the production of electricity are: 1, a bulk generation license; 2, large-scale self-supply license. For clarity, the large-scale self-supply license is issued to any development that is over 500 kilowatts and will be completely off-grid. That is, would not have a Belco meter. And just for the record, there's no one in Bermuda who has that license, even though it exists. Bulk generation license holders must enter into a power purchase agreement with Belco to sell all their electricity back to Belco at the current rate of between 12 cents per kilowatt for the solar array at the finger to 18 cents 0.5 for Tynes Bay. Currently, ratepayers are buying electricity for Belco at an excess of 45 cents per kilowatt. Mr. Speaker, you'll be aware of the government's commitment to reduce use of fossil fuels by 85% in production of electricity by 2035, which is reflected in the 2019 Integrated Resource Plan. One of the categories of renewable energy defined in the IRP, as it is known, is distributive solar, i.e., solar developments installed by individual residences or commercial entities. Promoting distributive solar development while restricting installations to 500 kilowatts for large commercial enterprises is an anathema to the goals of reduction in the use of fossil fuel to produce electricity, and also limits the ability for a distributed generator to earn a return on their investment. In the present scenario, developers of large-scale installations cannot use for their own benefit the renewable energy that they produce and are required by the Act to sell their renewable energy to Belco for approximately 12 cents per kilowatt hour. They must continue to buy all of their consumed electricity from the utility for an excess of 45 cents per kilowatt hour. Mr. Speaker, current large developments such as the National Stadium and government's rooftop installations fall in this category. Other potential developments, such as hotels and Google's proposed data center, would encounter the same challenge. Mr. Speaker, while large installations, should be encouraged, it would be foolhardy to just provide exemptions for 500 kilowatts without considering the impact of the grid and the cost to the ratepayer. There are risks that would occur with such developments that are still connected to the grid. If not managed effectively, there could be power disruptions affecting the development and the neighborhoods adjacent to the large development. In addition, the savings derived from the feed-in tariff for such a development could lead to costs being assumed by ratepayers. Therefore, the regulatory authority, RA, must determine before the installation is built that the development will have minimal impact on the grid and ratepayers. Mr. Speaker, this bill will allow a Bermuda registered company, government department, or statutory authority intending to install over the threshold of 500 kilowatts and intended solely for use at the applicant's location to apply for a license to exempt from the 500 kilowatt threshold. This license will be subject to the RA's oversight, which seeks to ensure minimal risk to the grid, and the grid and costs remain stable. The license holder will be permitted to distribute up to the permitted amount, 30% or less, as determined by the RA of its electricity generated. Mr. Speaker, it is our goal to move Bermuda to a clean and sustainable energy future with affordable renewable energy. This bill will assist us in continuing to achieve this goal in a measured and well-regulated fashion. I look forward to the future debate on the bill when I can go into more detail on specific merits of the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Premier. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Works. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to announce the official establishment of the Bermuda Land Management Corporation. Mr. Speaker, in July 2002, the then Cabinet decided that the Central Policy Unit should complete a review of 17 quangos which focused on the following objectives. 1. Determine whether Bermuda's quangos as currently constructed are meeting government's aims, and if not, recommend methods of achieving alignment. 2. Determine whether there is accountability to the government, and if not, recommend an adequate structure to accomplish this. And 3. Develop mechanisms for ongoing review. Mr. Speaker, the scope of the review covered a wide range of topics, including the establishment and governance of each body, its existing relevance, feasibility, effectiveness, levels of accountability to government, expenditure, income, whether the work could be more effectively or more efficiently carried out within government proper or by some other means, determine governance and best practice in other jurisdictions, and to develop a mechanism for ongoing review. All laudable goals which resulted in a report entitled Untangling Bermuda's Quangos, a review of quangos in the Bermuda government, presented in October 2003. Mr. Speaker, next month will mark 21 years since the original recommendation to merge quangos that share similar objectives, mandates, skills, accounting procedures, and staffing levels, and I'm proud to say that this government has accomplished that goal. Mr. Speaker, earlier this year, this Honorable House, through the West End Development Corporation Amendment Act 2024, approved the merging of two government quangos, the West End Development Corporation, WEDCO, and the Bermuda Land Development Company, BLDC, to create the Bermuda Land Management Corporation, BLMC. This only makes sense and should not come as a shock to anyone. As I've said previously on numerous occasions, there is no justifiable reason why on an island of only 21 square miles that we have two organizations, two CEOs and two CFOs, and all the attendant officers, machinery, and staffs carrying out very similar functions for the most part. The full demonstration of a necessary bureaucracy on display. Mr. Speaker, on September 1st, 2024, the BLMC began its operations, and I'm happy to report that there were no redundancies resulting from this merger. While it is true that the BLMC is seeing minimal duplication of roles, but note that reductions will occur over time through natural attrition through retirement. The reasoning behind this direction is the benefit of ensuring that any important institutional knowledge is retained into future operations while avoiding severances. I must again commend the management and staff of both former organizations, many of whom did not believe we would proceed and that their jobs would be in jeopardy if we did. I am particularly pleased to again thank both the Bermuda Industrial Union and the Bermuda Public Services Union for collaborating with us to revise the collective bargaining agreements so that they were ready for the Bermuda Land Management Company. Mr. Speaker, since commencement of the West End Development Corporation Amendment Act 2024, the BLDC has now officially ceased its operations, with the company's wind-up process being completed fully by the end of the fiscal year in March 2025. Mr. Speaker, the former BLDC head office at Triton House has been closed, and a new BLMC sub-office has been opened at Commercial Park, 5 Wallace Point Road, St. George's. A consolidation of offices and workshops of the former BLDC. This now provides the ability for the BLMC to lease the former BLDC headquarters to private companies for additional rental income and to encourage economic development in the area, a topic I will speak on in another statement. Regarding the headquarters for the BLMC, the head office is in Dockyard in the Clock Tower building, which houses the accounts department for both former entities. The CEO, Business Development Department, and HR share their time in both in the East and West as demand requires. Moving forward, Mr. Speaker, over the next few weeks and months, the general public will start to see the transitioning of physical things like signage, vehicle logos, email addresses, and the website to reflect the new BLMC. Mr. Speaker, there are many positive endeavors on the horizon for the BLMC, and I look forward to Chairman MP Tyrrell, the board, Mr. Diaz, and his team continuing the government's commitment to manage and develop this entity to progressively improve the social and economic success of the company. As I close, Mr. Speaker, I wish to reiterate that the process engaged to effect this amalgamation, minus the 21 years, can certainly be used in the future for further Quango amalgamations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Would you like to do your second statement now, Minister?
Yes, thank you,
Go
Mr.
right
Speaker.
ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to demonstrate to the listening public this government's pledge to foster economic development and diversification in Bermuda. I tabled a motion earlier this morning in this Honorable House to approve the lease agreement between the Bermuda Land Management Corporation and Seagrass Services Limited, a local subsidiary of the multinational corporation Google, LLC. Mr. Speaker, honorable members may recall in September 2023, Google announced a commitment to invest in Bermuda by installing the Nuvem cable, a new transatlantic subsea cable system to connect Portugal, Bermuda, and the United States. It is intended that the Nuvem will improve network resiliency across the Atlantic, help meet the growing demand for digital services, and add international route diversity to support the development of information and communications technology, infrastructure for the continents and countries involved. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to say that Bermuda will play an integral role by hosting a significant cable station to enable multiple cable landings. However, it is more than a cable landing just passing through the island. It will provide a backbone for a wider strategy of a digital port with all the requirements for supporting data and digital infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, in November 2023, by way of a letter of interest, Google indicated its desire to acquire property measuring a total area of 5.9 acres, originally owned by the government of Bermuda and leased to the former Bermuda Land Development Company Limited, located at Burrows Hill between Stocks Road and Hall Street, Southside, St. George's Parish. For clarity, this area is currently the remote control car park in St. David's. In November 23 as well, the then BLDC, the government, and Google began negotiations. Evaluation of the property was conducted by the Bermuda Realty Company Limited, which indicated that the likely market value of the freehold interest in the property was $4,650,000 or $825,000 per acre. After considerable due diligence, Mr. Speaker, and as a demonstration of good faith by all parties involved, an agreement in principle has been made for the site at Burroughs Hill. Mr. Speaker, it has been agreed in principle that a lease of 262 years will be held between Seagrass Services Limited, a Google local subsidiary, and the newly established Bermuda Land Management Corporation for the sum of $4,867,500. Honorable members are reminded that BLMC is a singular entity established resulting from the merger of the BLDC and the West End Development Corporation. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, after further negotiations with Google, BLMC management, and the tenants of the RC car track as a result of the agreement, the current track location will be moved to another site. A planning application will soon be submitted for a new RC car track, and all works will be funded entirely by Google. Mr. Speaker, it is intended for this agreement to act as a magnet, drawing other players in the communication industry, whether for laying their own cables or leasing from Google. There have already been inquiries from other major companies into building data centers in Bermuda. The successful agreement for this lease will deliver on the government's economic development commitments outlined in its 2020 election manifesto, FinTech, and the National Space Strategy by creating the infrastructure which supports a technology hub. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the land leasing and physical development of a large cable landing station, there are a number of other expected benefits to Bermuda with the landing of the Nuven cable, including employment for positions needed on an ongoing basis for the cable landing station, creating the infrastructure which supports 1, a technology hub for FinTech, and 2, increased satellite earth stations. Communication satellite earth stations are already either set up in Bermuda or showing increased interest in placing additional earth stations here. Increasing investment in renewable energy. The cable landing station will need between 600 kilowatts and 3 megawatts per annum of electricity over time as the cables ramp up. Providing access to Google's significant resource support, including A, training opportunities to Bermudians by giving them access to Google's training platform, B, providing support and advice for other sustainability projects and marine-related initiatives, including providing technology for monitoring and enforcement, and C, supporting Bermuda's education initiatives and community development opportunities. I'd like to take this time to thank all parties involved for making this happen, in particular, the Honorable Walter H. Roban, Minister of Home Affairs, Ms. Razi Azar, the former Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Home Affairs, Solicitor General Mrs. Shakira Dill Francois, and Senior Crown Counsel Specialist Ms. Chantal Bailey of the Attorney General's Chambers, Mr. Andrew Diaz, the COO of Bermuda Land Management Corporation, the Board of the Bermuda Land Management Corporation, the Board of the former Bermuda Land Development Company, Mr. Jerome Wilson, Partner and Head of Technology and Innovation, and Mr. Neil Molyneux, Senior Associate Property Team of Appleby Global Services, and Ms. Fiona Beck, formerly of the Bermuda Business Development Agency, and now a consultant with Google, all of whom were instrumental in bringing this matter to its conclusion. We are most appreciative of their efforts. Mr. Speaker, this agreement demonstrates Bermuda's vitality for innovation and importance on a global scale. As I have stated before, it is intended for this agreement to act as a magnet, drawing other players in the communication industry to Bermuda. I'm pleased to say that this is precisely the scenario envisioned when the Submarine Communication Cables Act 2020 was developed under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Bermuda has a well-established reputation for creating sound regulatory policy, and this serves as yet another example of our forward-thinking approach. Mr. Speaker, we hope that this agreement sets the foundation for even bigger and better things to come. We welcome Google's proposed investment in Bermuda and look forward to a long and productive relationship with them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Economy and Labor. Minister?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to introduce in the Honorable House today the position paper on progressing Bermuda's minimum hourly wage. Mr. Speaker, as members of this Honorable House may recall, the first statutory minimum hourly wage rate for Bermuda was established on the 1st of June 2023 by the Employment Minimum Hourly Wage Order 2023, which set the minimum hourly wage rate for employees within Bermuda at a rate of $16.40. Mr. Speaker, the purpose of the position paper is to outline the government's commitment to the progression of the minimum hourly wage rate beyond the current $16.40 and to propose a framework in which this can be achieved. Mr. Speaker, while the establishment of a minimum hourly wage in Bermuda was a significant step towards ensuring fair compensation for employees and the reduction of income inequality, a further step needs to be taken to assure that employees can maintain a reasonable standard of living and their purchasing power is not diminished while the cost of everyday goods and services rise. Mr. Speaker, the government supports the position paper's proposal to progress the statutory minimum hourly wage rate every 2 years by the annual average rate of inflation, utilizing the Consumer Price Index as the indicative measure, capped at 2.5% per year. Using this methodology, the newly proposed statutory minimum wage rate to take effect in 2025 will be between $16.81 and $17.23. Mr. Speaker, the CPI is often used as a benchmark for adjusting minimum hourly wages, and it tracks the average change over time in the prices paid by consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services, which includes, but is not limited to, essential items such as food, housing, clothing, transportation, and healthcare. Since the minimum hourly wage is intended to help workers afford basic living expenses by linking the minimum hourly wage rate increases to the CPI, albeit capped, the minimum hourly wage can be adjusted to better keep pace with inflation. Mr. Speaker, the position paper details the government's intention to enhance the wage floor over time, why the CPI is the most appropriate method to utilize to progress the statutory minimum hourly wage rate, those most likely to be impacted by the progression of the statutory minimum hourly wage rate, and the role of the Wage Commission and the government will play in the monitoring and evaluation of the continued progression of the statutory minimum hourly wage rate in Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, it should be noted that in its 2021 report on the proposed minimum hourly wage rate, the Wage Commission posited that as there is an employment census counting the number of jobs and the rate of pay for those jobs annually, the minimum wage can be reviewed annually. Additionally, the International Labour Organization's 2021 Global Wage Report highlights that over half of the countries with statutory minimum wages adjusted their wages at least every 2 years. Mr. Speaker, when drafting the position paper, the views of the Wage Commission were sought and considered. An agreement on the intention to progress the minimum hourly wage rate by linking it to the CPI was reached. Mr. Speaker, as this government continues to strengthen the protections afforded to employees within Bermuda, adopting a transparent and consultative process for implementing and monitoring the minimum hourly wage adjustments will foster inclusivity and avoid the erosion of the minimum hourly wage rate to allow employees the opportunity to maintain income equality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of Minister for Cabinet Office, Minister Sees, and I believe it's her first statement in this role. So, Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to share an update on a ministerial statement made on May 31st, 2024. During that statement, it was announced that the Patty Piper unit would submit a letter of intent for Bermuda to participate.
Yep.
Can you
Yep,
hear me?
we hear you.
Yes, okay.
Yep.
Apologies. During that statement, it was announced that the Patty Piper unit would submit a letter of intent for Bermuda to participate as an associate member in the Global Cross-Border Privacy Rules Forum, otherwise known as the Global CBPR Forum, and that steps would be taken to update that participation to full membership once Piper comes into full effect in January 2025. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to share that in response to the June 11th letter of intent submission, the government of Bermuda received confirmation that the Global Forum Assembly of the Global CBPR Forum endorsed the membership committee's recommendations that Bermuda met the conditions for recognition as an associate. A press release was issued on August 26th by the forum, welcoming Bermuda along with the Dubai International Financial Center and Mauritius as associate members. Mr. Speaker, the government of Bermuda and the Office of the Privacy Commissioner have engaged with other jurisdictions to develop Bermuda's reputation as a trusted hub for international data transfers. In this case, we have been active in the Global CBPR Forum since its creation in April 2022. This relationship is important for our jurisdiction. As a global business center, Bermuda-based organizations receive data from around the world. International recognition as being a trusted jurisdiction for privacy and data protection is therefore beneficial for our international and local organizations. Mr. Speaker, recognizing trusted jurisdictions is important in international or cross-border data transfers and is an important key feature in most privacy and data protection legislations. Bermuda's participation in the Global CBPR Forum as an associate member shows its commitment to the development of trusted cross-border data transfers and its operation. It is recognized that being a trusted jurisdiction aids in providing certainty when Bermuda's businesses engage with service providers and other entities in trusted jurisdictions. Additionally, it is a mechanism that would attest to the world that Bermuda is a trusted recipient of global data flows. Mr. Speaker, thanks to the Privacy Commissioner's engagement with the Global CBPR Forum, Bermuda is also involved in the forum's cooperation arrangement for privacy enforcement, or Global CAPE. This is a multilateral arrangement for privacy enforcement agencies, PEAs, to facilitate cross-border enforcement of privacy and data protection laws. Bermuda, Dubai, and the UK joined the Global CAPE as PEAs from outside of the Asia Pacific region in April of this year. Mr. Speaker, participation in this forum means that Bermuda now stands side by side as partners with the United States, Canada, Australia, Japan, Singapore, Korea, the Philippines, Mexico, and Chinese Taipei, and other associates, including the UK, the Dubai International Finance Center, and Mauritius. The growing forum promotes interoperability between the privacy and data protection laws of the member jurisdictions by providing an international certification system that organizations may use if they choose to demonstrate compliance with common privacy principles that align with PIPA. Mr. Speaker, we affectionately say that Bermuda is another world. In truth, we live in a time of unprecedented global connection and cooperation, particularly regarding technology and digital topics. In each of our corners of the world, our fellow human beings face common issues in our pursuit of health and happiness for our families and our neighbors. Mr. Speaker, We may at times think that we are so far removed from from countries across the ocean from us that we need not think of them. But on the contrary, this is a time in which we must be forward focused, in which we must anticipate challenges over the horizon, and in which we must band together to solve thorny problems. Groups such as the Global CBPR Forum will help to set global standards on best practices in technology and digital business. Not only can we in Bermuda benefit from the work being done, but we can also bring our Bermudian perspective on regulation and governance. In doing so, we may influence the course of these standards both to our benefit and to the benefit of our global neighbors. Mr. Speaker, we are fortunate to have experts in these topics serving in our government's Patty Piper unit who represent Bermuda with distinction on the global stage. With the Global CBPR Forum's continued growth, our contributions will add to all of humanity's common understanding of digital rights and protection from harms. Mr. Speaker, as we count down to Piper coming into force on the 1st of January 2025, it is important that Bermuda's privacy regime is available to work with others around the world. We are positioning our jurisdiction as privacy preserving, collaborative, and innovative in its interactions. We meet international standards for conducting business while protecting personal information and respecting privacy rights. As business and technology evolves, we will continue to provide the optimal environment. Mr. Speaker, our government departments are hard at work on their preparations, and I encourage the community to review the materials released by the Commissioner's Office on his website, www.privacy.bm. Here, they will find a guide to PIPA that provides detailed explanations and instructions for tasks, as well as a weekly Road to PIPA series with guidance and checklists that businesses can use to develop their compliance program in advance. Mr. Speaker, I must thank the Privacy Commissioner and his team at the Office of the Privacy Commissioner and the Patty Piper Unit on their work with the Global CBPR Forum. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Transport. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, every great accomplishment begins with a vision, a dream that seems unattainable at first, but through perseverance and dedication becomes a reality. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to share with my honorable colleagues the status of the 2024 cruise.
Yeah, Minister.
Of the 2024 cruise ship season. Provide a snapshot of the projections for the remainder of the year and compare last year to this year. Mr. Speaker, the 2024 season began with a projection of 190 calls. Subsequently, a few additional calls were added following the budget debate in March, making 2024 an average cruise ship season. This year started well with 14 cruise calls during the winter months of January, February, and March, bringing 42,000 plus passengers to our shores. There were 6 cancellations, 4 of which were due to weather events. Mr. Speaker, during the second quarter from April to June, Bermuda received 60 cruise ship calls with 192,000 plus passengers and 5 cancellations, 3 of which were due to weather events. Mr. Speaker, July and August, which are part of quarter 3 statistics, these months saw 43 calls and 1 cancellation due to weather, bringing 170,000 plus passengers to Bermuda. Of note, on July 6th, 2 ships arrived in port for one day, only with 9,227 passengers combined. Both ships left at the same time, testing our transport infrastructure to its maximum. However, thanks to pre-planning and increased transport options, the day went well. Also, Mr. Speaker, you may be interested to know that the greatest number of passengers arriving on the same day was on Thursday, August 29th, with 9,975 passengers. Our transport infrastructure went well compared to the largest ships days we had in 2023. This was due to having more public buses, ferries, and minibuses in service in 2024. Additionally, the well-conditioned coordinated efforts of all the transportation team on the ground, working together from one end of the island to the other made a significant difference. The queues for transportation were much shorter and more manageable than in 2023. One area identified this season that needs improvement is a queuing system for passengers getting back on board their ships at the same time, particularly on leaving days, and solutions are being worked out for future calls with individual cruise lines. Mr. Speaker, policies have been in place for this year to ensure that cruise ships do not arrive or depart at the same time during peak periods going forward for part of 2025 and all of 2026 going forward. This measure will alleviate the pressure on transport availability, especially on departure days, allowing ground transport operators sufficient time for turnarounds, especially for beach runs, ensuring shorter queues, and that passengers can return to the ships before departure. Looking ahead, Mr. Speaker, from September to December, providing there are no more cruise ship cancellation, other than the 3 known in advance due to scheduling changes in Q4, we are projecting 57 more cruise ships calls with an estimated 143,000 passengers. This brings the total projected number of cruise calls to 177 with 15 cancellation and 548,000 plus passengers by the end of this year. Mr. Speaker, comparing 2023 season, which saw 183 calls and 41 cancellations with 525,000 passengers, to 2024, we project a marginal increase of 22,000 plus passengers, or 4.3%, and a small decrease in the number of cruise calls by 6 or 3.2%. Mr. Speaker, the honorable colleagues, you will be well aware that Senator, the Honorable Owen Darrell, JP MP, Minister of Tourism, Culture, and Sports, joined me to engage with the St. George's Mayor, East End MPs, Bermuda Chamber of Commerce, Bermuda Tourism Authority, and local St. George's stakeholders to help breathe some life back into the old town this summer. It was notably clear after listening to our cruise line partners and local stakeholders that significant efforts were needed to help increase guest satisfaction and overall guest experience in St. George's. At the beginning of this season, Bermuda Chamber of Commerce stepped up with a plan of action to help find resources and funding and to create cruise ship activations to host a mini vendor market in King Square called Breeze Market. 6 days a week with live music and some buskers along Water Street and or in King's Square. The key objectives were to invigorate and rejuvenate the town, stimulate the local economy, attract visitors, and foster pride and ownership through the active involvement of residents and businesses. Midway through this initiative, the Breeze Market, which began at the end of May with 27 vendors, was touted as being successful and had already reached its first goal to rejuvenate the town. People could feel that the town was alive again through increased visitation by hotel guests, residents, and cruise passengers arriving by government bus and ferry, NCL, tender, taxi, and minibus tours. This initiative also allowed the collection of accurate data on passenger flows into the square and what days were the busiest, for example, Mondays, and the slowest, for example, Sundays, and what times were the busiest in the town, such as 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. I know a final report will become available at the end of the year and will highlight more specifics, but I wanted to share the great progress to date. Marine ports have also been running a ferry 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, and will continue that service through to November 2nd. Mr. Speaker, as we reflect on the achievements that this government has made, it's important to acknowledge the hard work that has brought us here. Success does not come overnight. It is a result of countless hours of dedication, sacrifice, and perseverance. It is a combination of the efforts of everyone who's contributed to our collective goal. Mr. Speaker, while we can't reveal the exciting projects we're developing with our cruise ship partners, I can say that if successful, they will enhance Bermuda even more as a cruise destination. Mr. Speaker, we will not rest on our laurels. This government will continue to strive for excellence, to push the boundaries of what is possible, and to pursue our vision with the same passion and dedication that has brought us thus far. This journey is far from over, and there are still many milestones to achieve and many victories to celebrate. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I'd like to extend my gratitude to dedicated individuals in the transport sector, including bus and ferry operators, minibus, taxi, NCL tender crews, and teams who have worked together harmoniously to ensure the smooth movement of our guests. Their professionalism and commitment to customer service played a pivotal role in creating a positive impression of Bermuda from the moment our visitors arrive. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize the invaluable effort of our team in the Ministry of Transport, TCD, Department of Public Transportation, Marine and Port, the West End Development Corporation, under the chairmanship of Brother Naval Tiro, Bermuda Tourism Authority, Meyer Agencies, the Bermuda Chamber of Commerce teams, the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, Visitor Service Bureaus, Visitor Service Centers, and those stakeholders, service providers, and attraction teams on the front line who gave above and beyond to help make our visitors, and for the purpose of this statement, our cruise visitors feel welcome, have a great experience and a wonderful time, and want to return again and again. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of National Security. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to provide this honorable House with an update on the appointment of the Cybersecurity Advisory Board and the enactment of the Cybersecurity Act 2024, which received royal assent earlier this year on June 24th. Mr. Speaker, the Cybersecurity Advisory Board exists to provide the Minister of National Security with advice on best practices for the safeguarding of information resources of Bermuda's essential operations. In accordance with Section 5 of the Cybersecurity Act, the board will provide advice on the management of cybersecurity to protect Bermuda's economic well-being and to prevent cybercrime. They will provide advice to the Cabinet on the management of Bermuda's national cybersecurity strategy and the internal government cybersecurity program. They provide advice to the Public Service Executive on the management of the government cybersecurity program. They provide advice to relevant public officers to enable them to meet responsibilities relating to the government cybersecurity program. Provide advice to critical national information infrastructure, or CNII, enforcement authorities, and coordinate and encourage collaboration amongst the government and other CNII enforcement authorities and the entities they regulate. Mr. Speaker, the board will bring together public officers and private sector stakeholders to contribute to the development and management of our cybersecurity policies. Board members will include the Chief Information Security Officer and the National Disaster Coordinator from within the Ministry of National Security, the Chief Information Officer in the Department of Information and Digital Technologies, the head of the Bermuda Public Access to Information and Personal Information Protection Unit, a representative from the Bermuda Police Service, the Bermuda Hospitals Board Chief Information Security Officer, 2 private sector cybersecurity advisors, and a lawyer with cybersecurity experience. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that the necessary private sector members have been identified and have been formally appointed to the board. Members of the public can expect to be apprised of the full composition of the board, including the chairman and the deputy chairman, through notice in the official gazette in the coming days. I wish to thank the board members for their willingness to serve Bermuda in this capacity. I look forward to receiving the benefit of their expertise and collaboration in the vital task of ensuring that Bermuda is cyber safe. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with the Cybersecurity Act 2024, the board will be expected to provide me with a report on the exercise of its functions at the end of every period of 6 months. The report will include information on the general state of cybersecurity in Bermuda and will be used to inform the Cabinet's decision-making on cybersecurity matters for the country and for the public service. The board will work closely with the Ministry of National Security's Cybersecurity Unit in furtherance of the unit's function to provide cybersecurity services, capabilities, and expertise to the government and other CNII enforcement authorities and entities. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, will recall that the Cybersecurity Act provides for the designation of CNII entities and enforcement authorities. The Cybersecurity Unit is continuing its consultation process to ensure that those identified as CNII enforcement agencies and CNII entities understand how the Cybersecurity Act will impact them. When this act was tabled, I assured this honorable House and the public that the requirements of the bill were not meant to be overly burdensome for the affected entities, but needed to be robust enough to ensure adequate protection and recovery capabilities in the event of a cyber incident. With the assistance of the newly appointed board and the Cybersecurity Unit, we intend to provide guidance and assistance in the development of a cybersecurity framework that protects both government and privately owned critical national information infrastructure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Junior Minister of Finance. Junior Minister.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning in this honorable House, pleased to announce an exciting and forward-thinking initiative that fulfills a promise from the PLP's 2020 election platform and continues our path towards building a nation of owners. Mr. Speaker, home ownership is not just a cornerstone of personal financial security, but a foundational element of strong, stable communities and a resilient economy. Today, I am pleased to share the details of a new measure that expands the scope of the National Pension Scheme Act with the aim of helping many Bermudians towards the dream of home ownership. Mr. Speaker, for many, the path to purchasing a first home can feel out of reach, with the difficulty of meeting the down payment requirement often identified as a major barrier. Our government recognizes these challenges, and we are taking action to empower Bermudians by giving them greater flexibility with their pension savings. Simply put, this new initiative will allow individuals to access a portion of their pension savings to assist in the purchase of their first home. Mr. Speaker, a key feature of this initiative is that the individual can use the refund not only for their own first home, but also can use the refund towards a home for their children and or spouse. This means a parent who may not have sufficient cash flow can still assist their child in purchasing their first home. Imagine the possibilities this creates. A family coming together to ensure the next generation secures their place in the Bermuda housing market. Mr. Speaker, I am reminded of a story shared to me by a constituent, a single mother of two. Her daughter recently completed her studies and secured her first job and was eager to step on the property ladder, but was short of the necessary down payment. While the mother had always wanted to help, her own financial situation made it impossible to provide the cash her daughter needed. With this new initiative, that mother now has a way forward. She can support her daughter's dream of home ownership by accessing her pension, while her daughter can contribute a portion of her own pension savings as well. Together, they can secure a home. Together, they can invest not just in a property, but in their family's future. Mr. Speaker, this is not like the pension withdrawals that were made available during the pandemic. Given the urgent nature at that time, there were limited controls on where and how those funds were spent. However, with this initiative, the applicants had the option to use a portion of the funds from where they are currently invested to now invest in their first home. Mr. Speaker, I must also address a question that may be on the minds of some. I must emphasize that this initiative will not be available to individuals on defined benefit pension plans, such as public offices. Let me be clear. The government did not decide to exclude public offices. However, the very nature of defined benefit plans simply does not allow for such withdrawals. These plans provide fixed payments upon retirement and are structured in such a way that the benefits are predetermined and guaranteed. Any deviation, such as a one-time refund, would undermine the stability of these plans and potentially affect the long-term security they are designed to offer. But Mr. Speaker, for all other eligible Bermudians, this initiative opens the door to new opportunities. It provides a hand up, a chance to overcome the financial barriers that have kept too many out of the housing market for far too long. It is a tangible, meaningful way to deliver on our promise of building a nation of earners. Mr. Speaker, this initiative is not just about giving people access to their pension funds. It's about giving people access to their future. It's about equipping families with the means to achieve one of the most important financial milestones, home ownership. I am confident that this initiative will be met with enthusiasm and appreciation by many Bermudians who understand the importance of home ownership, and I look forward to seeing how it transforms lives across the country. Mr. Speaker, it must also be highlighted that this option is completely voluntary, as individuals are more than welcome to keep their pensions as they are. However, for those that choose to take this opportunity, the Ministry of Finance is currently working with the Pension Commission to ensure each are making an informed decision. Mr. Speaker, later today, I will be tabling the National Pension Scheme Occupational Pension Amendment Act 2024. And so I would like to end by emphasizing that together we are stronger, and together we are building a nation of earners. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, Junior Minister. Members, that brings us to a close of the statements by ministers and junior ministers this morning, and we'll move on. The next item on the order paper, reports of committees. There are none. The next item is the question period, and just reset the clock here for that 1 moment. Okay, members. Good. There are written questions this morning, but those written questions didn't require a oral response. So, Opposition Leader, have you received your written response?
I have not, Mr. Speaker.
They ship you up, Mr. Lamb. Should have had them on the tabling. I'll make sure you get them. You should have had them available for you now on table.
I'm looking forward to getting the response.
Okay, they have been received. He should have by now just hit send to you once we got to this stage. So I'll have him send it as soon as he gets back here. So the written responses have been received to Parliament, and they'll be put in your hand momentarily. That'll move us now to the questions from the statements that were presented this morning, and we have a few questions from the statements. And the first question this morning would be to the Deputy Premier from MP Pearman. MP Pearman, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's the question to Minister Robin, correct?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Minister, and thank you for your statement to this Honorable House this morning on the tabling of amendments to the Electricity Act. In your statement, you say that we are going to see the creation of a license for, quote, large developments to generate electricity above the current license threshold of 500 kilowatts. I'm just curious, Minister, where do you envisage this happening? Where will these large development production centers be? Do you have any in mind specifically, or is this just a general lessening of the policy? Thank you.
Minister?
Thank you. As mentioned in my statement, the likely initial candidates will be the National Sports Center, and government is already deploying a major development of a number of buildings that will have solar. One of them, which is being done right now, is the DPT, the depot in Devonshire. When that is completed, I think the interest is that all of the solar that's produced on that will likely contribute to particularly the charging stations for the numerous buses. So those are the likely candidates. Obviously, they will have to go through the application process, but certainly the National Sports Center is one of the particular candidates for this type of license once the process is fully in place.
Yes, supplementary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister, in identifying those two potential sites. In relation to those, quoting from your statement, you say that the bill is seeking to strike, quote, a balance between the needs of the license holder, also known as a distributed generator, and the stability of the grid while minimizing any negative impacts, including costs to the ratepayer. Is the license holder in the statement that I've just quoted, is that Belco, or is the license holder you have in mind that you're balancing matters with one of the two potential new developments? Thank you.
Just for clarity, Belco has a license as a bulk generator and also as the transmission and distribution license. So they already hold a license. So it wouldn't be Belco I was speaking about. It is for a future distributed applicant who might qualify for a license.
Yes, second supplementary. So just so we're clear, Minister, where you say in the second paragraph, license holder, that's any new potential license holder. I think that's what you've just confirmed. Thank you.
Yes.
Second question?
Yes, second question. Over the page, on page 2 of your statement, you've indicated, and I'll quote again, that it would, quote, would be completely off the grid. That is, would not have a Belco meter. Bulk generation license holders must then enter into a power purchase agreement with Belco to sell all generated electricity back to Belco. Can you help me and help the public understand how you envisage that working and what would happen if Belco chose not to agree to that agreement?
Minister?
Trying to make sure I understand the question of the member, Mr. Speaker.
Do you want me to restate it? Have him restate
No,
it? or-
okay, I'll give an answer, and then if it's not clear, there are three, under the Electricity Act, there are 3 license categories: bulk generation, transmission and distribution, and bulk generation for self-supply at the moment. There are no bulk generators of self-supply, and I think that's what the member was speaking to. There are no applicants who hold that. There is no prospect at this point of anybody applying for that, because that's a totally off-grid license. The license that we're creating is to be held by someone who wishes to use most of the energy that they're generating for supplying their own operation. And any extra, they might get into a power purchase arrangement with Belco to sell what might be their surplus from what they use. And I hope that answers the honorable member's question.
Supplementary?
Yes, supplementary. Thank you. Yes, I think we're in the right church. Just let's see if we get the right pew here. You're talking about potential, as I understood it, large-scale self-supply licenses for potentially 2 identified spots, namely NSC and the depot in Devonshire. And the statement says that they would be completely off the grid. And then it talks about selling generated electricity back to Belco. So I'm just wondering if you can sort of help us with that. That doesn't seem to accord with your last answer. So could you just help us with this? Thank you.
Minister?
Certainly, the applicant who holds the new license we're creating wouldn't be totally off-grid. So I don't know, I don't believe that's what I said in my statement. There are, someone who is exclusively for self-supply would be off-grid. That's a totally different license that currently exists. This is a brand new license for an applicant who will qualify, who will be using most of the power, if not all of it, for supplying their own operation, their standalone operation. They won't be able to sell that to anyone else. They'll be using most of it, if not all of it, for their own operation. If there's any surplus, they would need to be selling that to Belco. But even the even the National Sports Center, the depot, or some other large commercial operation that might see, is not likely to be off grid. That's a totally different license. If you're going to be self-supplied, totally off grid, that's already an existing license category that exists. So this is a new category. And those who hold this license are not likely to be totally off grid, because that's a totally different license category altogether.
Second supplementary. Yes, Minister, I'm grateful and I thank you for that answer. And just because you did ask, you said you didn't say it. It's the top of page 2, paragraph 1. You said it would be completely off grid. I appreciate that you've now answered that and clarified it, but I think that was where my confusion arose. Thank you very much.
Just for clarity, if I can just reread the sentence, because it goes from page 1, top to page 2. The license currently available under the Electricity Act for production are 1, the bulk generation license, which I mentioned, the large-scale self-supply license. For clarity, large-scale self-supply license is issued. 2 is issued, so it means it's in existence. 2 is issued to any development that is over 500 kilowatts, and will be completely off-grid. That's an existing license. We are talking about a license to be created, totally different category. And as I said earlier in my answer, there are currently 3 licenses on the Electricity Act of 2016. Bulk generation license, and just to give the public and the House more clarity, there are only about 3 entities in Bermuda that have those licenses, Belco being 1, Times Bay being 2, the Solar Finger being 3. The transmission distribution license is currently exclusive to Belco. The self-supply license that is also mentioned here, there is no one in the island that is no commercial or large entity producing over 500 kilowatts that is self-supply, that is totally off-grid. There's no entity in Bermuda that has that license. There's no one who's doing that. This is, again, I'll go back, Mr. Speaker, a new license category. So the member has misinterpreted what I said. I was speaking about existing licenses, not the new license with that sentence.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm grateful for the clarification. No
Third
further question. No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. That's the only questions for this morning. We'll now move on. The next statement that has questions is a statement from the Minister of Economy and Labor. And MP Pearman, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Honorable Minister for presenting to this Honorable House today his statement entitled "The Position Paper on Progressing Bermuda's Minimum Hourly Wage." Oh, I see you've moved seats. I apologize. I didn't see the minister in the chamber, but he's moved chairs. Honorable Minister, my question is relating to the second paragraph on the second page of your statement, where you talk about how the statutory minimum hourly wage is going to be calculated reviewed every 2 years by annual average rate of inflation using the Consumer Price Index. My question is, does this mean that the minimum wage could go down as well as up as it adjusts on that basis?
Understood.
Theoretically, if the cost of living goes down, then based off of the 2-year calculation, if it goes down in the first year and is up in the second year, then you'll take an average of the or you take the cumulative changes. But we don't have instances where we have annual decreases in our consumer price index, and so that is less likely to be an occurrence. But over the 2 years, if there is a decline in the first year and an increase in the second year, it'll be smoothed over.
Supplementary. MP King. Supplementary?
Yeah, Mr.
Sure.
Speaker. Regarding the minimum wage, the question is for the minister responsible. I'm wondering if the rise in the minimum wage or reduction would be based also on the amount of business of the employer. So the employer is basically breaking even, understanding that the consumer price index is indicating one thing, but for the small business owner, an increase of $1 or more can potentially break it. So will that be considered as well when the review of the minimum wage is considered? Thank you.
Yeah, Minister?
The paper sets out the mechanism for progressing the minimum wage. Part of the framework within the paper is that the Wage Commission would have to do further consultation on recommendations for progression past 2025. And so consultation with industry would have to take place, but what we will not stand idly by is allow persons to continually be paid what people consider widely as poverty wages. And so we will work to progress the minimum wage rate in a society where we have one of the highest cost of living. The other, I just want to dispel this thing about it may go up or down. The minimum wage rate will not abate beyond or below the current position that is set. And so if the inflation rate goes up, we'll progress the minimum wage. If the minimum wage is lower than the cost of living goes down, we will make a decision to hold the minimum wage as is. I don't see any instance where wages have actually abated in society. That is not in the best interest of the worker, and that is not in the best interest of Bermuda as a whole.
Yep. Supplementary? Fairman, this would be your first sub?
This would be my first sub, or in fact, it's going to be my second question, if
Okay,
that's right,
second
Mr. Speaker.
question, no
Thank you.
subs here.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for those answers. Still on page 2, this is about the cap. So this adjustment's going to occur every 2 years by the second paragraph, and you say it's going to be capped at 2.5% per year. Just so I'm clear, and I think we are clear, but I just want to make sure I've understood. That means that the gross amount of the minimum wage, or the actual amount of the minimum wage, will only ever go up by 2.5% every 2 years. Is that right?
Minister?
Incorrect. Because it's a 2-year review, it means the maximum cumulative it will go up. It would just be over 5%. Because it will be 2.5 in the first year and 2.5 in the second year.
Supplementary?
No further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Minister, that brings an end to questions for your statement. We'll move on. The next statement that has questions is the Minister of Transport, and the opposition whip would like to put a question to you. Do you can there?
Yeah, on page 4, to handle this, sorry, what is the plan to handle this oncoming of 57 new calls as far as transportation is concerned? We recognize that it's extremely stressed at this point. And if we're going to have 57 more calls, what are we planning to handle the trafficking back and forth of our members? And has there any been, I'll leave it for supplemental.
Minister?
I believe the member was talking about 57 calls in the fourth quarter. So we have had calls in the fourth quarter for many years. And as you know, that that the busiest season is our summer season. So if we can handle right now, if we're handling to a certain degree, the summer season, the fourth quarter from now, from October 1st to December 31st, should not be a challenge.
Supplementary?
Yes, supplemental. The Honorable Minister is saying that it should not be a problem. I guess I'm looking for something a bit more definitive that it should not be a problem. We're reading in the papers, and if we go up to Dockyard and you listen to taxi drivers and those who are driving the minibuses and the likes, it is a stress situation. If you go to the beaches, it is a stress situation, and I'm just trying to get a little more detail as to how he plans on distributing and alleviating some of the stress that goes on for the tourists and for the locals and getting back and forth. It is a problem.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not saying that it will be totally perfect. Let me make it very clear to that point. But we have managed to a certain degree for the summer season. And the winter season, we should see less calls than we have for the winter season. That's what I'm saying. So we'll do all we can. But as you know, the government's are looking at other avenues as far as increasing the availability of transportation. We're not there yet, but we're also looking at that idea. So we're hoping that the individuals who know the minibuses, the taxi drivers, as you know, we normally in the winter season, we get less traffic when it comes to going to the hotels. So we probably will see more taxi drivers floating up there in the dockyard area when it comes to cruise ship. Our numbers go down in the winter season for hotel. So we should, like I said, we should see more availability of transportation in that area.
Supplementary or new question?
Just want to be clear on what the minister's answering. Well, I'll do another supplemental.
Okay.
In trying to understand, the minister just said that there are seasons where it's high and low. I'm really talking about those high season times where it is extremely stressed. We know that when it's low ports calls, that we don't have a problem. But during those high times, I was just hoping that maybe the minister would have given us a layout of how he's going to handle that. He did mention that having more minibuses, did you say, or taxis? I think he said taxis. But again, it requires a plan as we move into the new season. And I was just hoping that he might be able to outline more detail so the public can be aware of how he's handling the new cruise ship season coming up. And I'm not getting an answer that seems satisfactory.
Mr. Speaker, the honorable member mentioned 57 calls, and he referred to that this is the fourth quarter of this year. It's not the new season. New season begins next year. And as I reset during my what I said was that the government's looking at how do we increase more transportation going forward, and you're well aware of that. And that's one of the things when it comes to rideshare. You're aware of that, how we're looking at it. But I mean, you mentioned 57 calls, which has to do with the fourth quarter coming up, which starts October 1st. That's what you mentioned. And that's what you asked about. And so what I'm saying is that for the fourth quarter, normally you'll find less transportation needed for hotels. So we should be able to use some of the transportation that is underutilized on that period, particularly up in the dockyard area. But when it comes to the new quarter, the new season next year, right? The government is looking at how we deal with transportation going forward, and you're well aware of what we're doing.
I'm not.
Would you like to put a second question? You used your two supplements. Would you like a second question?
Yeah, the honorable member is making an assumption that I know what the plan is. I don't know what the plan is, so I'm asking if he can lay out what that plan is to us.
Understood?
Member has not been living in Bermuda. Everybody in Bermuda is well aware that the government is looking at how we deal with rideshare. That increases more traffic, transportation on our road. You're well aware of that, aren't you?
Go ahead.
So the honorable member is well aware of that. If it's not, then like I said, it's not been living here on this little beautiful island of ours.
Yeah, supplementary?
No supplementary. This guy's ridiculous.
Okay. New question?
New question. Yes,
Okay,
new
well,
question.
we can keep it
Yes, I'll retract that. Yes,
Thank
yes. But it does speak to what I'm about to ask now. That slide comment. Also on page 5, the honorable minister, he's made a mistake here. Unless he mentions that, Mr. Speaker, the honorable colleagues, you will be aware that Senator, the Honorable Owen Darrell, JP, MP, Minister of Tourism and Culture, and it goes on. Unless he's mentioned MP, unless there's a by-election coming up or a general election coming up, I'm not sure how the Honorable Senator Owen Darrell became an MP. So that needs to be retracted. Is he going to retract it?
It's a clerical error that you're asking to be clarified for the sake of the record. For the sake of the record.
For the sake of the record, Mr. Speaker, the honorable member is aware that the member is not an MP. But as I said, he's aware, again, as well aware of that issue, as he is with the numbers as far as 57 for the fourth quarter.
His point is not a clerical error for us to correct. Thank you. Thank you. The next statement that has questions this morning is for the junior minister. Junior minister, the opposition leader would like to put questions to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to you, sir, and members and the listening public. I have some questions relating to the Honorable Minister's, Junior Minister's statement, wherein he gave an example of a parent of this new provision will allow for a parent to take out a pension, a portion of their pension to provide for a child's home. Given that he also raises the prospect of the sandwich generation, or rather we're facing a situation right now where the families have to basically support both our parents and our children. How will we mitigate, the Honorable Premier brought up a statement. How will the junior minister, how does he intend to mitigate the risk that we will not, in fact, be increasing more of the sandwich generation and putting more pressure on those families? Thank you.
Junior minister.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. So, as I mentioned in the statement, the Ministry of Finance is working with the Pension Commission on not only mitigation efforts, but also efforts to educate the public prior to them making the decision so that they are fully aware of the decision and the impact of the decision that they make. So it is a totally voluntary option for them to pursue. But prior to them making that decision, there will be sessions and information given to them on the impact of that decision as well.
Supplementary.
Yes, would the Honorable Junior Minister be able to describe some of the potential impacts from undertaking this action?
Junior Minister.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, one of the impacts was that people who do not currently have a house that will now have an option to have a house. Second,
point of clarification. The question was in relation to the increased pressures onto the sandwich generation and the detrimental effects, those pressures being detrimental. So the question is mitigating detrimental impacts.
Mr. Speaker, I'm unaware of where in the statement he's referring to about a sandwich generation.
Yes, thank you. I'll make that clarification. The Honorable.
Are you making reference to a comment in the statement itself?
No, that was a comment made by the Honorable Premier.
Beg pardon? Okay, it's two separate statements. Well, your questions are to the junior minister now, right? Okay, well, the sandwich generation wasn't referred to, and he is referred to the premier statement.
Yes, thank you. I was waiting for everyone on the government side to stop talking so I can get to you. Thank you guys for the assistance. Thank you for the clarification, team. So my point isn't that the junior minister was. It's not about the specific language. What I'm saying is that in existence today, the term is widely accepted that there is something called a sandwich generation, and that is for people who are taking care of both young children and elderly parents. So my question relates to common terminology, and the question was asking about how we're going to mitigate some of the impacts that is the detrimental impacts to the sandwich generation by this project. So I'm just trying to get to what are some of those. We asked about the impacts, or we asked about the mitigation. What are you doing to mitigate the risk? He answered that question, and during the answer, he said, we are also going to educate them about some of these potential impacts. And so my supplemental was
supplementary is based on his response.
Yes, sir.
And his response was that you're going to help to show them how to mitigate some of these
impacts. He
So
said
now
that
your
word.
supplementary is basically asking them what are some of those efforts that are going to mitigate those impacts.
My question is, what are the impacts that he mentioned?
Senior Minister, I was trying to help you. I'll get
No,
prepared.
Mr.
Are you
Speaker, it's
okay?
perfectly fine. I think I answered it.
Okay.
One of the most considerable impacts of this decision or this initiative is the fact that people who could not afford to own homes will now be able to do so. That is one of the impacts of that decision.
Supplementary? Second sub.
Yes, could he speak to what he's doing to mitigate and address the detrimental impact, not the positive one? I believe I'm allowed another supplemental.
Junior Minister?
Mr. Speaker, there is any withdrawal from your current pension savings will impact.
Is your
and
mic
take-
on?
If so, is it?
Yeah, okay.
Yes. So any withdrawal from your current pension savings will impact your benefits as you retire. That is a risk that we recognize, that is a risk that we are preparing for, and that is a risk that we will educate the applicants prior to them making the decision.
All right. You had your two subs. Would you like a second question?
No, thank you. We got there. We got there. The second question, thank you, Mr. Speaker, is on the long-term security. The Honorable Junior Minister did mention that this benefit would not be available by the defined benefit plans because it would undermine the stability of such plans. Would the Honorable Junior Minister be able to speak to the other types of pension plans and how those won't be undermined? Thank you.
Senior Minister?
So that I'm clear, he's asking for other types of pension plans other than defined benefit plans, i.e. defined contribution plans. And so I guess I'm asking for clarification. I think that's the answer. Another example is a defined contribution plan. Is he asking how this will impact defined contribution plans?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
So as I mentioned earlier, withdrawal from defined contribution plans will have an impact on the benefits as individuals retire.
I think I would go to what are the impacts, but I think I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Members, that brings us to a close of the question period. That's right. I'm sorry. Officer Whip, you wanted a question for the Junior Minister too.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this, you didn't mention in your statement, Minister, exactly defining how much can be accessed. Is that something due to come, or what? Yeah, in the statement, I would have thought that at least we would let the public know how much they can access of their pension plan.
Junior Minister?
Mr. Speaker, yes is the answer. It was due to come. As I said, we're tabling it, and it was due to be mentioned in our brief. But to give a sort of example, we're looking at individuals between the ages of 18 and 45 will be able to withdraw up to 30% of their pension savings, and individuals 45 to 64 will be eligible to withdraw up to 15%.
Supplementary?
No, second question.
Question, okay.
Yeah. Was there any thought when you were looking at this potential of access to pensions for homes for first-time owners? Was there any thought possibly around this whole discussion of potentially looking at how we can also look at Bermudians who are losing their homes to access their pensions?
Mr. Speaker, there were a number of options that we considered, but I would stick to that. Yes, that already exists, but I would also stick to the fact. Stick to the fact that. Sorry, I would stick to the fact that it is an election promise that we made in 2020 that this is what we'll do, and is an election promise that we fulfilled.
Further supplementary or third question?
That's good. Thank you.
Good. Okay, members, that brings us to a close of the question period. And before we move on, I'd just like to acknowledge that in the gallery, there's former Senator Parent Chief, and I believe MP Michael Scott was here earlier. Welcome, former Senator. Nice to see you in the gallery. The next item on the order paper this morning are the condolences and congratulatory remarks. Would any member, Premier, would you like to make your contribution?
Absolutely, Mr. Speaker.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask that this honorable House, and I would like to associate all members of this honorable House, I'm sure all members would like to be associated, to send a letter to the family of the late Lefroy Brownlow Sinclair Place, a man of immense stature who is Bermuda's oldest living resident, who passed away just one day shy of his 108th birthday. We all know that he was a centenarian whose life spent 2 centuries enriched by unshakable beliefs in his quest for knowledge, and his fire for zest of life remained undimmed in his later years, and without question, he left an incredible legacy. And of course, we celebrated his homegoing service wearing the colors for the winning cup match team, which I'm sure someone else will give a congrats. I will not, get to that point at this time, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd also ask for a letter of condolence to please be sent to my constituents, Betty and John Richardson, on the passing of their son and former public servant, Mr. Kirill Burrows, and I'll associate members, all members. Of course, I'd also ask that included in that letter be to his children, Yara and Kristen, and also his entire family. Mr. Speaker, I'd ask that letters of condolences be sent to the family of my late constituent, Miss Annette Daniels, who passed away in her 71st year. Miss Annette Daniels was an educator of excellence who taught through the public school system through many years. She was received numerous tributes from the teaching community of her passing, and she was without question a wonderful constituent who I had the opportunity to visit and will surely be missed. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask that I would like to send condolences, and I'm sure the Minister of Public Works may, but if not, I'll associate it with him, with a former a former public officer, Mr. Kenneth Cann, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year. He was an amazing public servant, an amazing person, someone who was full of life, someone who my family knew very closely and personally, and I certainly would like to extend our condolences to his wife, Terry Lynn, to his mother, Claudette, and to his entire family for his untimely passing, Mr. Speaker. It was certainly a shock to many. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. Deputy Speaker, would you like your 3 minutes?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to be associated with the remarks of Mr. Place, Brownie Place. One of those guys gentlemen, I should say, he used to walk just about every day down South Side where he resided. A regular goer at St. Paul's Amy Church until he couldn't get out every Sunday, but he was certainly a member of that church. Also associated with the remarks of Kenny Cann, who worked for Public Works. He will certainly be missed by his wife, Terry. This guy had a great personality to all that knew him. Mr. Speaker, I would like to send condolences to the family of Wilford Steed, a war veteran who died at 103. Mr. Steed, I knew, played golf up to well in his probably 90, 95, 96 years old, and he kept up with the guys he played with. A great person, great personality in Hamilton Parish, and he was a pastor of the church, one of the churches in the country. And also Mr. Bill Steed, who died at 94. Mr. Bill Steed, they used to call him Uncle Bill, who used a cycle every morning from Crowell, Radnor Road, to Hamilton and back. He'll be sorely missed by his family. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy. MP Lister, you
Good
have
morning,
your 3 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I do have a lot to say, so please bear with me as I will be rushing through.
You got 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I would first like to start off on a sad note by giving condolences. Speaker, as we have been out of this house for 2 months, I did go over and to see the obituaries of people that I know And I'd like to send condolences, first of all, to the family of Miss Alfreda Rochester, who was a former colleague of mine, and I was sad to find out that she did pass. So send condolences to her family. Also, Mr. Speaker, to the family of former MP Mr. Kenny Bascom, who passed while this House was out of session. Also, Mr. Speaker, to three family members, to Miss Oriole Fraser, who also passed, Ms. Islin Monica Can, who passed, and also recently cousin of mine, Mr. Duvon Signer, better known as Wani from St. George's. So I'd like to send condolences to the family of all of those persons, Mr. Speaker. And now on a lighter note, Mr. Speaker, I sort of tasked myself with trying to go over from the last time you said in this House to today, trying to capture all of these sports persons who have achieved things in this time period. And it was a daunting task, Mr. Speaker. But I will start first off by giving congratulations to the under-19 boys national football team, who this summer made it to the final of the under-19 CONCACAF tournament, undefeated, only to lose in the final on penalties, Mr. Speaker. It can be heartbreaking to lose, but the fact they made it, they're undefeated, shows that they can build on this and look forward to big achievements as they progress. Also, the Bermuda Pacers track team participated at the Russell E. Blunt East Coast Invitational, and they brought back 16 medals, 5 gold, 5 silver, and 6 bronze. 2 outstanding athletes were Zidon Ferbert, 2 gold, and set a meet record. And he was also voted as the outstanding male in the 13 to 14 age category. And then also Alira Daniels got 3 medals, and Azari Jones also got a gold medal. And the 11 to 12 girls 4x11 relay won the gold medal also. Also, Mr. Speaker, in athletics, Sanchez Smith and Naomi McGuinness also won gold medals in their discipline. And to the other members of the team who won silver and bronze, I'd like to send congratulations to them. And Mr. Speaker, I do have a lot on my list, but I will have to save some for the other sessions. Lastly, I want to also recognize the victorious Somerset Cricket Club team, Mr. Speaker, who for the last 10 years or more has been holding this cup, and we wish them, Mr. Speaker, St. George's had it for about 20 years, 50 years ago. We're halfway through, and so we want to continue and hold on to this cup and beat that record of 20 years. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, to yourself for offering this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, MP. I believe one of the St. George's colleagues would like to be recognized. So MP Swan, would you like your 3 minutes?
Thank you, and I'm not going to take debate and use up any of my time. I would like to start off with condolences to some very key constituency number 2 stalwarts that have passed on, and I would like to associate the condolences to the family of Miss Elsie Crane with the Deputy Speaker, who I knew her very closely, having been a trade unionist from St. George's, a staunch Progressive Labor Party Wellington Backroad lady, who I'm proud in 2016 to have honored after one of our events. Mr. John Thompson from Slip Road, well known to persons older than me as Ginger Blue, but may he rest in peace, and to his family there. And my dear friend who passed away from Payne Lane West, Miss Teresa Calabras, and an aunt to member Anthony Richardson in this honorable house. I would like to congratulate all the students that have returned back to school this year, especially the wonderful ones in St. George. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to extend congratulations to the Bermuda Paralympians, Jessica Lewis and Yushay De Silva Andrade, for their remarkable representation of our island at the 2024 Paris Paralympic Games. I believe the Premier may have had an opportunity to have been there. Their dedication, resilience, and sportsmanship have brought pride to Bermuda, and we commend their outstanding performance. Mr. Speaker, with what little time I have left, I would like to congratulate a young man from Spring Benny, and I'd like to associate the Honorable Member Scott Simmons with this. One of his constituents, Kamiko Smith, on being the low Bermudian qualifier for the Butterfield Bermuda Championship, and he's joined by amateur now, Eric West, who was once the pro at Port Royal, and a young man who works at Bermuda Government Golf Courses at Port Royal and Ocean View, Nick Jones, the son of the legendary Eardley Jones, who will be returning to that event as well in November, and we wish them well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP. Then the other member, MP Simmons. Jamal Simmons, you have your 3 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, Bermuda. I rise on several sad notes today to first commemorate and recognize the passing of my constituent, Miss Linda Augustus, who was the ultimate get out the vote resource for her more reluctant members of her family, because she could be counted on every election. You know, there was a certain member of the family who would say, well, I don't feel about voting, I don't know about voting. Mama made sure she was there, and she was a very strong supporter, always had an encouraging word, and we are thankful for her support and for her life and a contribution to our community. I was surprised when my brother and member of parliament, Kim Swan, mentioned the passing of Elsie Crane. She was a very, very dear friend of mine, working in the 2007 election, trying to help the former member Dean Fogle get elected, a stalwart of the party, very, very strong supporter. And oddly enough, it ties into my final tribute today, is to a representative of the former representative of the St. Kitts government, St. Kitts and Nevis Labor government, Glenn Ghost Phillips. Glenn Phillips was a former minister and sports star in St. Kitts, but I formed a connection with him when I was working in St. Kitts because he used to come and spend his summers with Elsie Crane. So he was very familiar with Bermuda and the ties of Bermuda, and it is a very sad thing to note the passing of these individuals. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP. MP Famous, you have your 3 minutes.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Speaker, colleagues, and listening audience. I'll start off with some condolences from people from Devonshire. Mrs. Geraldine Francis, a Barclayite. Her daughter, Lisa Jackson, a Barclayite. Mrs. Gerald of the Augustus clan. And Mr. Stephen DeCosta of Devonshire, all of Devonshire. Mr. Speaker, also on the following on from MP Simmons, I want to give congratulations to the people, both there and here, of St. Kitts and Nevis who have achieved 41 years of independence. For those that don't know, St. Kitts population is actually smaller than Bermuda, and they have been doing quite well for a country of 41 years, independence away from the colonial masters. So for those who say we're too small to go independent, St. Kitts is a prime example. And Mr. Speaker, I want to give commiseration to Tottenham Hotspurs for losing, for Liverpool for losing, and congratulations to the mighty Manchester United for beating 7-0, warming up for this season. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does any other member wish to make a contribution after that? MP Simmons Wade, you have your 3 minutes.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good
For
morning.
the general public. Thank you, Mr. Famous. Even though we do give condolences, I think it's very important that we acknowledge people when they are alive and they have birthdays. But I do want to say, based on my constituency, I have so many people that have gone over 65, which makes us realize that we have a significant aging population. So I'm going to go very quickly over my list. Peter Green, who's 89, Ruth Daniels, who's 86, Dorothy Stevens, who's 85, Peter Avison, who's 70, Alvin Fitzgerald, who's 70, Alexander Frith, who's 87, Thelma Gibbons, who's 88, Glenda Trott, who's 70, Antonio Bathallo, who's 70, Andrea Simmons, who's 75, Harold Simons, who's 70, Heather Wolf, who's 87, Janet Shaw, who's 70, Lisa Gibbons, who's 86, Sandy Gilbert, who I won't say how old she is, but happy birthday to Sandy, Joe Android, and Sandy Fifth Brown, who is 80. So I will say we have a significantly aging population, and I think it's important that we acknowledge these individuals before we are given condolences for their death. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP. Does any other MP wish to make a contribution? Any other member? Colonel? you
Mr.
have
Speaker,
your-
thank you.
Yes, you have your 3 minutes.
I'd like to first be associated with the condolences to the family of Kiro Burrows. Apart from working with him in public works many years ago, I first met him because his father, John Richardson, was my first sergeant major in the Bermuda Regiment and served with him for a number of years. And so I know the family well, separate and apart from the work environment. He had, or they had a lovely send off for him last week. And it's always uplifting when you go to a funeral and people aren't overly sad about the fact that they passed. They concentrate on their life and the work that they did. So I offer condolences to his children and his wider family. I'd also like to offer condolences to the family of Kenny Can, who worked for Public Works. And I don't think I can think of another human being who I encounter. Every time you encountered him, he was a pleasant, alive, happy person with some idea about something new that he was going to do. And so it was always a joy to interact with him. The ministry has a tradition when staff pass that at every area of the ministry, they, as soon after the passing as they can, they gather all the staff together and have a moment to remember and honor their fallen colleague. And we invite the family. And it's always an interesting time because there are more men in the ministry than there are women. But on occasions like that, men actually step up to the plate and express their feelings and their offering of condolences in a very positive way. And so it's always an uplifting experience. It was, he worked out of the depot at Prospect. A huge number of his family attended the celebration, including his wife and his parents and various siblings. And it was just, even though it was a sad occasion, it was a very positive experience because many of the staff expressed their own individual views. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to join in with the condolences for the family of Kenny Can, who was a constituent of mine. My deepest condolences to his wife, Terry Lynn, his mother, Claudette, and his dad, Sheridan. It was always a joy when I canvassed that. I called it the Ken Complex. If you go down there, it's one of the uniqueness about Bermuda, where you have entire generations of families living in the same complex. And it was always, Kenny was always smiling. He was always someone that was joyful. And so when I was informed of his passing on the day that he did pass, which was the day of the hurricane, I was completely shocked, just like I'm sure everyone else was when that did happen. Mr. Speaker, I also would letters of condolences sent to the family of Apostle Dr. Jimmy Dinwiddie Jr. Sr. Jimmy was, he's the uncle to my daughter, and he was definitely a towering man for anyone who knew him. But he was probably one of the most honest and forthright and persons that you could speak to if you really did have an issue or had a problem. He would really give you really good advice, and his send off was absolutely phenomenal and beautiful. Again, a day before the hurricane, it took place, and we actually had to cut it short because everyone had to get home and get off the roads. I think around hour 3, they started saying like, we got to wind down, but it wasn't one of those ones again where people were tearful and down and out. We were really joyful to celebrate his moving on. Again, attached to condolences for Carol Burrows. I did work with Carol Burrows at Public Works. I did work with him when I did leave Public Works. He is an architect in the field that I was prior to being in full-time politics. So I had a good knowledge of him and the work that he could do. And so my deepest condolences to him, Delcina, and the rest of his family. Mr. Speaker, congratulations to Harrington Workmen's Club on the occasion of their 2nd annual Back to School Haircut and Braiding Day. It was a phenomenal success to go down there. Full disclosure, that is my club that I'm a member at, and I do sit on the management committee. But I did go down there, and it was wonderful to see people so many barbers and hair braiders donating their services to ensure that our children had proper haircuts and hairdos done to get back to school. Again, on the congratulations, Mr. Speaker, to Bailey's Bay Cricket Club for retaining the Eastern County Cup. As we all know, we talk about cup match here all the time, but the Eastern County Cup is only 2 years younger than the Cup Match Trophy, having started in 1904. And again, congratulations to all of the students and educators as we started school in the last few weeks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister, MP Richardson, would you like your 3 minutes?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Colleagues and those in listening audience. I want to start off with a condolences really for Mrs. Catherine Joy Smith. She is one of my constituents, and as you said earlier, I'll associate Minister Rabin with this. As he said earlier, it's interesting because in the area where she stayed, it's the whole family. And so I wouldn't mention her names because when you mention one person, others get upset in terms of you didn't mention the rest of them, except I will mention her granddaughter, Miss Trina Riley, who is a fixture herself in the Davos Hill area. I also, Mr. Speaker, want to acknowledge for all of us, I believe, the passing member earlier this last month, actually, for Ms. Nicholas, who went missing, and everyone. It was amazing how the community got together to actually search for her, but unfortunately, it was discovered that she had died. Mr. Speaker, I want to take time, and I don't know what the process is, if a letter can actually be written, but if it can be done, I would ask for a letter to be written to Ms. Marilyn Cameron. Ms. Marilyn Cameron achieved the distinguished achievement of 50 years of service in the public service. She worked in the Accountant General's department, and I know her personally because I was there some time ago. And what the general public does not know, I don't think, is that when government changed its computer system to J.D. Edwards about more than 20 years ago, Marilyn Cameron was one of the lead persons in the team that literally worked through the night to make sure there was a seamless transition so that every single public officer would be paid on time, notwithstanding a significant change in government's accounting system. And so it was Marilyn and many others. But I want to make sure, Mr. Speaker, that we all recognize that given such service, anybody who gives service to one employer for 50 years, it really is an achievement. I know that she's going to formally retire next month, but if it's possible, Mr. Speaker, I would ask for a letter to be written to her because it is indeed a significant achievement for anyone to work so long and to be given such significant service, because no one can ever complain that they were not paid on time based upon the significant work that she did and how she has trained so many others throughout the years that came through the Accountant General's Department. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP. Does any other member wish to make a contribution at this time? Any other? Opposition Whip?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just wanted to echo the sentiments that was given already to the Kenny Bascom, former MP of the House. I must say that there probably was not. I haven't met anyone that on the ground that knew how to keep in contact with people and could move about with just about any circle considering the background that he had, which is a phenomenal feat to see that someone like himself was able to pull up his bootstraps and to become someone that sat in this house to bring about good legislation for the people of Bermuda. On a more personal note, I've known him ever since a kid, and he and the fellas used to come over back when everybody's doors were open, and you could just walk in. And he would come in on many occasions with his buddies, sit down with my father, and have these incredible, crazy conversations that they would have, and then get intoxicated at the same time. And by mid-evening, my mother had made our lunches, and this guy was eating our lunches. And my father was letting him go ahead and do it. So I have a lifelong relationship with him, and there was a great love for who he was and what he was able to do. I think what was most outstanding was, as he matured, his love for young people. And many a times he would come to myself and others to assist, to help out some of the young men, especially that were falling awry and going places that we would not like for them to go. And he was very key, but low key about it, in ensuring that we got assistance to many of the young fellas who were having trouble just trying to survive here in Bermuda. So we can't say enough about his contribution. There's so many things that can be said, but we are thankful. And thank you for the moment of silence this morning, Mr. Speaker, for honoring such a great man, the Kenny Kiprock Baskin.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to make a contribution? Any other member? There are none. Well, before we move on, I'd just like to add a couple of comments to some of the remarks. And I'd like to be associated with the remarks expressed by MP Famous for Lisa Jackson and her mother, Ms. Francis. I knew Lisa in a business relationship many years ago when she was handling pension services for my office, in fact. And she was a very easy person to get along with, very professional in what she's done. And, I think the whole island trembled when we found how her and her mother lost her lives so tragically there in Florida. So our hearts go out to her daughter and to the family as they mourn through this period. I'd like to be associated, of course, with the remarks that are expressed to the family of Mr. Brownlow Place. Yes, he was an icon to us in Bermuda and will surely be remembered as the gentleman that he was. And lastly, condolences to the Nicholas Fobler family on the passing of Miss Janet Nicholas, and again, a very tragic loss. But her family is a strong Somerset family, and I've known her family and herself most of my life, and I felt the pain and loss that they are sharing right now. With those remarks, we will now move on. The next item are matters of privilege. There are none. National explanations. There are none. Notice of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. There are none. Introduction of bills. We have before us this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, 8 bills to be introduced. And we'll start with the Premier, Minister of Finance. Would you like to lead us off?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm introducing the following bills for their first reading so that they may be placed on the order paper for the next day of meeting. The first bill is the Tax Reform Commission Dissolution, Appointment, and Validation Act 2024. And the second bill is the Companies and Limited Liability Company Amendment Act 2024.
Thank you. Deputy Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm introducing the following bill for its first reading so that it may be placed on the order paper for the next day of meeting, the Electricity Amendment Act 2024. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm introducing the following bills for their first reading so that they may be placed on the order paper for the next day of meeting, namely the Health Insurance Health System Strengthening Fund Amendment Act 2024 and the Bermuda Health Council's Amendment Number 2 Act 2024.
Thank you. Junior Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am introducing the following bills for their first reading so that they may be placed on the order paper for the next day of meeting. the Restaurants Temporary Customs Duty Relief Amendment Act 2024, the Hotels Temporary Customs Duty Relief Amendment Act 2024, and the National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Amendment Act 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that this honorable House now adjourn for lunch and return at 2 p.m.
Thank you, Premier. Members, we now stand adjourned for lunch until 2 p.m. Thank you.